The next presentation will be given by Nicole Collins and Ruth Del Fresno Gilliam. And Nicole is a Canadian artist, and she focuses on the effect of time, accumulation, force, and heat on materials. And she lives in Toronto and is an associate professor of material and visual culture at Ontario University. And Ruth Del Fresno Gilliam is a researcher and conservator in private practice, and amongst the many other activities, Ruth has created a very impressive online database where the interviews that she conducts with artists are published. Ruth and Nicole, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Let me share our presentation. Okay, so here we go.
Hi, everyone. We're presenting today from Tkaronto, Toronto, and North York in Ontario, Canada. We acknowledge the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Seneca, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of these lands on which we live and create.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And I am really, really happy to go after Joy and Karian because it resonates a lot. So let's go. We know that conservation means many things. We have been discussing it for a while. This symposium celebrates 20 years of teaching and learning conservation with all the changes and adaptations that have been needed. One of the concepts that keep coming back is care. This term has been overused lately with the pandemic and the explosion about the planet's exhaustion, social economic injustices, and so many more essential and devastating situations. But I am not going to go that universal or activist here. I am going to talk about care in not capital letters, in an intimate, humble way. Nicole and I have been collaborating for some years already. We have co-presented at a conference in Quebec, and I have been in her class speaking to her students. By the way, following with the panel yesterday, this is a great way to advocate for conservation, talking to the future generations of artists. But what I want to present to you is our path into reflection. This adventure started, or better said, reignited due to our personal struggles during a strange moment we were living in. Nicole and I have had many conversations for some time about her artworks for the future, keeping artworks for the future, preserving, maintaining, or not. But the way we started these big weekly meetings was based on personal care. I was not feeling well, she was not feeling well. We had been postposing our serious and conversations about her practice for almost a year because we were not in the correct mindset. In an impulsive act, I proposed Nicole meet once a week to talk about anything. No need to analyze art or conservation. The idea was to roll the ball. I do care about my artists, not only about their artwork. I have the privilege of working very close to them and creating with some of them tight relationships. When in 2015 I attended VOCA Artist Interview Workshop in Miami, I learned so many things. Thanks to Glenn Wharton and Jill Sturrett, I took with me one of the most crucial concepts: the importance of creating long-term relationships. To treat the artist's interview as something human and engaging, not an information collecting process. I had tried to be kind and human with the artists I worked with at that time. Jill was very kind to me when both of our flights were delayed, and I had the opportunity to keep talking a little more. She insisted that care and kindness were two essential aspects of the artist's interview, and that it was not easy if there was no trust. And trust is something that takes time. As Brené Brown says, trust isn't built in grand gestures, but in the small moments that people treat what is important to you with care. John Goldman calls it sliding door moments. So thanks to those just to talk meetings, we started to build something interesting. Talking about any other issue of life, we went back to our conversations about creation, decreation, and what the process meant for conservation. Nicole is an artist that has been working with encaustic for more than 30 years. That doesn't define her. That is the media she has used and mastered. Nicole has been engaged with time, permanence and durability, fragility and existence, and she has used art to explore and understand. Nicole, would you like to take it from here?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Ruth. And yes, to care and trust. I'm very grateful to share both of these with Ruth in our collaboration. And I'm grateful to the organizers of this symposium for inviting us to share our collaboration here today. My art practice began in the painting studio, and while it has expanded over the last 34 years to include drawing, performance, sound, video, sculpture, and installation, each with their own conservation concerns, it is still the deep history and legacy and the ongoing vibrancy of painting that informs me most deeply. I'm also a studio-based educator at the university level, both graduate and undergraduate. So everything that I discover and develop in my own studio follows into the studio teaching loop. My concern about and interest in conservation began the moment I engaged with wax as the binder for pigment in the early 1990s. Like most artists of my generation, I taught myself encaustic from the very scant resources available, depending on experimentation, trial and error, lots of error, to develop a method that would produce materially sound and resilient paintings. For example, early on, circa 1994, I learned the importance of an absorbent and properly prepared substrate when a painting was accidentally dropped and the encaustic cracked and delaminated in a mid-February Canadian winter transport from gallery to studio. I brought this accumulation of knowledge to my teaching at OCAD-U. In 2006, I visited for the first time with the students of my Materials and Processes studio course, the head of conservation, Maria Sullivan, and her expert team at the Art Gallery of Ontario. These visits continued over a number of years and contributed significantly to our studio-based research and study and to my own evolving pedagogy and studio practice. I entered into the Master of Visual Studies program at the University of Toronto in early 2007, where I took the opportunity to interrogate my painting practice up to that point, creating and intentionally deconstructing and then reconstructing a series of encaustic paintings, which is a unique possibility due to the malleability and the resilience of wax. In a beautiful moment of synchronicity, I came across an eFlux announcement of an upcoming event at the Getty Research Institute. And I made my first journey ever to Los Angeles in January 2008 to attend the Object in Transition Conference, which included presentations by conservators, art historians, curators, and also theorists and artists, many in collaboration with each other. It was the first time I saw this breadth of representation across these related disciplines. It poured with rain the entire weekend, and I was traveling alone, so the only souvenir image I have is this view of the gondola heading up to the center, which many of you will recognize. The conference featured the brilliant work of many of the respondents in this current symposium. I was moved and shaken, in particular, by the presentation on Eva Hesse's Expanded Expansion by Michelle Barger, Carol Stringari, and Elizabeth Sussman, moderated by Jill Starrett. I saw there an intense curiosity and care that led these conservators to replicate Expanded Expansion with fabricator Doug Johns. The spirit of the artist felt very present. The ensuing discussion of the mortality of the art object, rapidly accelerated by the materials that Hesse chose to work with, resonated intensely with the intentional deconstruction and reconstruction that I was engaging with in the studio at that time.
Thank you, Nicole. We have been meeting lately because of your latest project, Crucible, which started in 2020, but is the result of a long reflecting process. Would you like to elaborate?
Sure. And I would add that this project was motivated in no small part by the cost of storage. So I've been decreating works from my archive. So far, approximately 130 different unique canvases. What we're seeing here is a section of an online database, the Center for Contemporary Canadian Art. It's hosted by Concordia University. And we can use this piece, we can follow this work through the Crucible process, and it will elaborate, hopefully. So in its original state, this painting, Blessure, was a 9 by 9 foot composite encaustic painting constructed of 36 panels. And here is one of those panels before and during the process of melting. So here it is before on the left, and in the center, still shot of the work in process. You can go to the next slide, Ruth. Thanks. That's okay. As the wax melted, it was collected in glass containers, as we can see on the right here. Proto-sculptures saved for future interpretation. In most cases, the canvas was then removed and saved for a future project, and the wooden stretcher behind was passed on to my studio neighbors, recent graduates of art school, the program I teach in. Very occasionally, around, say, 12 of over 130 canvases, the resulting stains left behind by the process presented themselves as new paintings, like this one in the center. And as you can see on the reverse here, the title and the date have been changed to reflect this process.
Is this deconstruction? So now, what are they? The Crucible, I mean. Remains, artworks, ruin?
So some of them no longer exist in a physical form, though they all exist in a digital form. I have good digital archive of images. Some of them have they become new paintings, or are they the continuation? They're the continuation of work. So, and this is something I certainly never planned initially, to make something and then 20 years later or more to transform them. But that's what they have, that's what has happened. I include this quote from Simone Weil because that term decreation really resonates for me. I first encountered it in the poetry of Anne Carson, actually, which followed me down the path to reading Simone Weil. And it's this idea of transformation, but not destruction.
Thank you, Nicole. One last question. How do you think our conversations have facilitated the reflection about durability and other aspects in your practice?
Tremendously. It's worth noting that our conversations are outside of any institution. Ruth and I are engaging in this collaboration as a study, as a collaboration. The conversations, because they are not constrained by time, have allowed for ideas and ways of thinking about what I'm doing in the studio to be shifted and impacted. They're longer. And as you said, you know, care takes time. And the questions that you've asked me are often questions that have not occurred to me in my insular studio kind of thinking. And they have teased out articulations of intention. I didn't know that's what I intended until we talked about it. And also the acknowledgement that I may change my mind. You brought that to this conversation. The artist might change their mind, which I know very much complicates the work of the conservator, but is very good for the artist to remember, and that it is okay for that to happen, but that it creates this new necessity for further collaboration.
Thank you.